All right, welcome to leadership module number 1D. Man, I got a lot of notes here. I'm going to try and go through this as expeditiously as I possibly can, but I think there's going to be some really good connections on this one as far as how to evaluate what a principle is, how do I gain an understanding about a principle, and then how do I put that together with the isogenics business. So a lot to go through, but I think it'll be worth it, and just hang in there with me. Make sure you're taking notes. And as it starts to come in, there's at the very end, I had some epiphanies or some ahas this morning that went along with it. So this it might sound like it's jumping around a lot, but that's how you come to understand a principle anyways. It's different dynamics of our lives and different examples that are out there, different teachings that are out there, that when you combine them together, that's where the correlations they start to, you start to collect all this information from, like, let's say again, from different lessons. And it could be life's lessons, and it could also be lessons that we're reading from some kind of study material. And as we gather them from different places, all of a sudden they come together and create this perfect storm or this perfect aha, where we have this moment of realization that through the internalization of each one of those different areas, those different dynamics, that's what makes the internalization process happen of the principle. And all of a sudden we're just like, I get it now. And so even if it does sound like it's jumping around, there's going to be parts where maybe it's jumping around for you, and somebody else is like right in that moment gets the aha. And for you, it might be jumping around from 3 different things, and then all of a sudden you get it, right? So again, don't look at any of this as something that's not a value, because you don't know what piece it is that's going to be a value. If you did, you would have went and got that and then resolved your problems, your challenges, and gotten past them. So it really is a process of collecting different data, but then also the different experiences that you have will help in, once you've reached a certain piece of data, it's enough, because your experiences now are able to relate to that data that you've now gotten in a complete enough form that you're now able to get it. And that, once you get that, you see the value in it, and it becomes a part of your values where you've internalized it, and then that changes the behavior. And so, and all of the things that we do, from a child learning about gravity and the power of influence, all of the principle of influence. A child learns how to influence and manipulate the parents very well. So it's a matter of internalizing something and see how we can use that particular principle to our advantage, but not in a way that you're taking advantage of other people, but that you're utilizing it so that it becomes something that's self-serving. And there are a lot of behaviors out there that are self-serving, that are not principle-based, and therefore they could hurt other people's feelings. They could end up coming back to bite us and have negative consequences. So we always want to look for the truth. That's why a principle is something that's true. There are other rules and guidelines that people follow that are not principally based. And it's through error. It's through an erroneous putting together things and thinking, oh, that serves me to follow it that way, but it really doesn't, because it was based in something rather than principle. And the more principles we can learn, and the higher the principle, the higher enjoyment and experience that we'll have. We'll be living life on a higher plane of existence based on the higher principles that we're following. Okay, and at any point you get to reject whatever principle you don't want to live. Now, I don't know why somebody would do that, but I guess it's just it's a ill-conceived process that's going on, that principle doesn't serve me, because they don't see it how it fits into the relationship of having a greater enjoyment. But that's only because they are living and have an understanding of principles down on the lower plane. But when you start to fill in the missing gaps, it's going to be like a spiral that's going up. And now they're like, oh, I totally see how I should have been living this principle. I didn't see it back here, but I see it here now because I progressed to that point. And again, it's just about the enjoyment of living and what level are we willing to enjoy our existence. But as we go up, it's always more for all, less for none, and it's a greater enjoyment, and there's more abundance and more power, but in, I'll say, quote unquote, righteous way. And so, and I would look at sin as anything that is breaking law, anything that's going to produce a negative result. So I would even say on the level of our health, if we're putting something in that's destroying our body, even though it might be something that everybody's doing, and it's like, let's just take something like an unhealthy piece of candy that really has like chemicals in it that actually destroy the body. That would be a sin because it's breaking a principle of health. So if you look at sin in that way, rather than a way that, some person is looking down at you and saying you shouldn't be doing that, and it's a totally different, it's not talking about a piece of candy, we're talking about something else. That tends to turn people off when they look at quote unquote sin that way. But a sin would be anything that's going to end up producing a negative result for you, okay? And eating any kind of edible thing that has chemicals in it that destroy the body, we obviously know that's not good for us. It might taste good in the mouth, but then it ends up destroying the body. So if you look at sin that way, then it helps you to be a little bit more open to maybe that connotation. All right, so let's jump into this. I want to try and diagram more things on the board than I did in the last module, just because I think it helps to see it a little better and to make these interrelations, especially when it's being taught in an environment like this and it's not so clear in the mind. All right, so I'm just going to start reading some of the things that I put down. Maybe something might, in this moment right now, may not click, and so I'll just go past it or I'll elaborate on it. All right, so I just know where the ending's going to get to, and I'm hoping to, be able to get this in a way that it all does fit together in one way or another. As you make more correct decisions and evaluations based on higher governing principles, your insights and behaviors change. They have to. So that would be like the law of gravity in a child that doesn't understand the law of gravity and then comes to know the law of gravity. That's on a higher plane of understanding of the principle of gravity. And everything, there isn't anything, how much income you have, to the cars you drive, to how much extra income is in the bank, how much are you making on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, where you live, the associations that you have, the kind of clothes that are hanging up in your closet, the flooring in your home, every single thing, your health, your attitude, everything has a principle applied to it. There isn't any place, there isn't any kingdom or principality or power that doesn't have a principle related to it. And it's about understanding the principle with that thing you desire. So Bob Proctor quote, I think it's Napoleon Hill. He says that I don't think he starts it out as a successful person, but maybe it is. A successful person is somebody who has so developed the faculties of their mind that they can have anything they desire or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. So accomplishing any desire you have, you've developed the mental faculties of understanding and discipline to those principles so that you always get the result that you're looking for. And when you know the principle and you obey it, that has to give you the result. Kind of like the principle of farming. You plant a certain seed and you cultivate it and you follow the principles of correct farming, you're going to get corn at the end. If you plant a corn seed, if you plant a carrot seed, you're going to get a carrot seed. That's a principle. And you can't change the fact you're not going to plant an apple seed and get peaches. All right, so that's how a principle works. And that's why it's so important to understand them and lead you into an intentional lifestyle. You know what you're going to have, what you're going to get because you understand the principles that you're obeying and that those things are resting upon. So like, all right, so this one is, let's see here. Let me get black. Whoops. All right, so let's use the example of crabs in a bucket. Okay, so Here's our bucket, right? And we have a see-through bucket. And here's the crabs down in here, right? All kinds of crabs. Okay, whatever. They have legs. Just imagine, go with me here. And as one of these crabs is going to escape the bucket, these crabs here, let's say, okay, so let me just read. The crabs in a bucket, a level 3 doesn't let the crab of a level 2 thinking pull them down. So let's say that this one here is a level 3 crab. And these here, that's a level 2. And let's say that one's a level 1. A level 3 doesn't let the crab of a level 2 thinking pull them down because they know something more about what the end result will be that the level 2 crab doesn't quite yet understand. A level 3 leader doesn't let the thoughts of a level 2 leader stifle or stop them. So as this crab that's a level 3 is about to climb out of the bucket and experience a whole bigger world, this one here is going to, if it's your friends and people like, they're not going to understand you as you're progressing and gaining an understanding of these principles. So the people in your current environment, there's going to be some who are level 2, some who are level 1. They're not going to understand you, and how they react to that is going to be different. But in a bucket, a crab will grab the other crab and pull it down and not let it out of the bucket. No crab will escape. They can climb up, but as soon as they go to climb up, another one's going to grab onto it and it pulls it back down. Now, that could be different comments that people say, how they start to treat you, what they say about you on social media, how they talk about you, and gossiping and saying all these different things. And they might even say it right to your face and just say, what are you thinking? You know, why do you think you're good enough to do that? Or whatever. They're going to try and pull you back down. Now, if the level 3 crab isn't confident in those principles and doesn't truly understand and see the results like the law of gravity, like if you're saying, hey, I'm not going to jump off the roof because of the law of gravity, and they're like, no, you're going to be fine. Come on, trust me. What are you thinking? The law of gravity? What's that? Just jump. You know you're not going to jump because you understand the law of gravity so perfectly. But if you don't understand the principles and the results that are now starting to change your behavior, and the lower level crabs don't see it, and you're just beginning and your roots haven't grown deep enough as a level 3, they could pull you back down. They could talk you out of doing what you're pursuing. So you just got to realize that, and you also need to realize that with people you're working with in your business, and not having expectations in just one crab. What if it's a level 1 crab you're trying to pull up out of the bucket and he's just resisting? It helps you to understand a little bit more why it's not your responsibility to pull them out of the bucket. It's your responsibility to present the information and articulate it as best as you know how at this point, and see if that rings true to them, if they're in harmony with that. Do not try to pull other crabs out. What's going to happen is they're going to end up pulling you down. You want to go on and discover other crabs who are ready to hear the information that you have that would be in alignment with your new behavior and what you're pursuing. And through the law of attraction, as you stay firm in that and you guard that focus, they're going to start showing up. And it may not be any of the crabs that you currently know, but they start coming out of the woodwork. You ever see crabs, how they just all of a sudden start popping out of rocks and you didn't see them? That's what's going to start happening. These people will start showing up in your life. There'll be circumstances that happen. There'll be situations. You'll be, at the store in line, and all of a sudden you have a conversation, and before you leave, that person and you have exchanged phone numbers and they're excited to hear about what you have to share. That just currently happened to somebody that I'm working with right now. They met him that morning, and that person is now, Crystal director in the organization within just barely over a month. And they just met him that morning. That was a crab that came out because this person was maintaining their focus. And all right, so does it make sense? And that particular person is following certain principles that actually brought that person into their life. They didn't fall back to the principles of a level 2 or a level 1, which would not have attracted that person. And you'll find people who come into isogenics They already are a level 3, a level 4, and they start attracting people to them all over the place because they're now the conduit to the thing that those people who are on that level were looking for. It's that web that starts to be that weaved that brings people to you. So a level 3 leader doesn't let the thoughts of a level 2 leader. And that's so important to understand. The behaviors and the thoughts, this person right here, I don't want to say isn't capable of having the same thoughts as a level 1 type of leader, like a low-level type 1 leader. The possibilities are there, but they just know better. They're not going to go there. It's like Wayne Dyer said when he was going up a very high-rise building, or he was coming down a very tall building in an elevator. And he just said, I was sitting in the corner, and I just heard people complaining about how the elevator keeps stopping at each floor, and another one was complaining about the weather, another one was complaining about their job. And he's just sitting in the corner. He says, I just don't do that anymore. And it was just a stark contrast between how some people do think and how some people won't think. And what is it that's dictating why Wayne Dyer won't think like that anymore? Because he understands the principle behind what that kind of behavior is going to bring into his life, and he doesn't want it. So it becomes very clear. And when you're a student of this and you just start learning these things, you're wondering how in the world is it that these people don't see what they're doing to themselves? Jack Canfield calls it the gorillas, you know. How is it they're not seeing the gorillas in their life? They're so obvious, they're like right there. All right, so a level 3 leader doesn't let the thoughts of a level 2 leader stifle or stop them. Those particular arrangements of thoughts don't exist in their minds. When I was a child, I thought and acted like a child, and now that I'm a man, I have put away childish things. Now that I am a level 3 leader, I put away the inconsistent, self-sabotaging thoughts of a level 2, not because I'm better than them, because I see the results that are connected to the different ways of doing that. It's understanding and internalizing new perspectives and evaluating on a different level because of internalizing new and higher governing principles. Let me say that again. It's understanding and internalizing new perspectives and evaluating on a different level. So you're able to string things along in your mind from one event to another before it even happens, and you can do it correctly at a higher principle, at a higher level of being governed by higher level principles. So you're able to string things along differently in your mind through thoughts and ideas and images because of what the principles taught you. So you can play these scenarios out in different behaviors, and you'll start to see the end result with clarity and with truth, immutable facts and truth. Just like the farmer knows, when I plant this seed, he goes through that process in his mind, but it's so like on cruise control now because he's been farming his whole life. When you learn a new principle, it's going to open up to you a whole new different view, a whole new different perspective. And it's going to change your behavior because you can now see how the behavior you were doing at a level 1 or level 2 doesn't serve you anymore. Because you can piece together dot by dot in your mind, that behavior produces this behavior, which produces that behavior, which produces that result. And you can string it out perfectly. Now, we already do that with a lot of things. It's a matter of doing it on a higher and higher plane of existence. So you have to have a strong reason for this because there is a greater responsibility. Because the greater the responsibility, there are greater, well, let me say this again. You have to have a strong reason for this because there's a greater responsibility. But through the greater responsibility to govern your behavior on this higher level, there are much greater rewards. And so the person that's thinking on a lower level, I don't want to do that behavior, doesn't see what the rewards are because they can't piece it together in their mind. They can only piece so far, and it's not far enough to see why this behavior would serve them, because they don't have the capacity to do it in that moment. Doesn't mean they can't gain the capacity, it just means they don't have the capacity right now. The mind is neuroplasticity. We can create new interrelationships within the mind and grow and expand our understanding. But this person hasn't expanded their understanding to even piece together what that end result would be like this person can. And so this person's going to stick to their guns. They're going to continue to do the behavior in spite of these crabs wanting to pull them down through their comments and the way they're being treated, right? So you have to have a strong reason for wanting to do this. Again, well, there's a story out there too about an eagle that was raised with chickens, and it didn't understand the principles that it had within it already innately to soar and fly in the air. So it scratched on the ground for food like the chickens did. And then one day it saw an eagle flying through the air, and it looked up and it thought to itself, I believe I can do that. And it spread its wings and started flying. So again, it's that personal inside desire, which all of us have. It's suppressed, or we're scared of it, or we've been belittled and there's a low self-esteem to not believe that we can actually soar as the eagles. But incrementally, if we help people along, we will get them to the principle to where they can finally see the behavior, and now they're soaring with the eagles rather than scratching with the chickens. When you're at the verge of crossing the threshold into level 3 and you start exhibiting some sabotaging behaviors, what we do that serves us is 3 by 5 the behavior. So when you're down here at a level 2 and you start to have your ahas, okay, you start to have your ahas, you're starting to see the relationship between the principles. And right now, your behavior is still at a level 2, and the habits have got you, the paradigm's still there. You haven't created a new paradigm or a new concept of yourself, and then stepped into that, and through transformation, and then into identity. So when we're here and we have these ahas, what that does is allows us the ability to now 3 by 5 it. So 3 by 5 it is getting your 3 by 5 card, putting that new identity down on a card, putting bullet points of what it's like. What's that new concept of living like for myself now as an already accomplished fact? So when we look at this cliff, here I am with my identity, where I'm at right now with my behavior. So I'm right here with my behavior. That's me right now currently. But now I'm starting to see how I could be over here because the principles are making sense. And this is the goal over here. This is the new concept. Okay, so there's the new concept of myself. Here's the current one. So what the law of assumption is that I imagine myself over here already. Not how am I going to get there, not what do I need to do to get there. I am there. That's what we do when we're down here at the level 2, getting the experiences and the results of a level 2. But now my mind is seeing how, through the principles, like we put the products in our body, we start to understand the compensation plan. And so we can now see that if we just can get people to put those products in their body, that's going to grow our compensation because of the compensation plan. And you start to understand those principles. Now, I would say, a level 1 and a level 2 can totally see that, but them really understanding the principles, they haven't quite got it yet, right? They haven't got the principles down enough to actually get their behavior to change and stay changed. Crabs keep pulling them down or whatever, or they keep pulling themselves down through their own crabs in their own mind. Right? So what we do is we 3 by 5 it because this is the fastest way from point A to point B. Once we can identify, okay, I now can see I have this sense of hope or a small amount of faith and belief that I can now accomplish this. That's called, what in Healthy Mind and Body, that's called the inception stage. All right? So you received enough principles to get you to have some kind of hope. Now, you want to 3 by 5 it, and you want to assume it as though it already is. This is the fastest way from point A to point B. What happens when we do that successfully, we start to attract to us every needful thing. It just starts to come into our frame of reference and our frame of awareness, and through that law of attraction. And then we have to act on it at that point. So what can happen to stifle that is you go into deception. whoops, let me go back. Get this right. Deception. Now, deception doesn't have to be the next stage, but it's going to be. Because the paradigm that you have down here at the level 2 or level 1 is your habitual thoughts, the way you're going to respond. But now you have some new triggers that you've been introduced to that you're going to write out over here. So I'm just going to put triggers. These are the new ideas based on the new principles you've been introduced to. And you're going to write them down. So rather than when you're assuming this and you're assuming your new concept of yourself, your mind and your old habit and your paradigm and way of doing things is going to try and pull you down to the deception. The key here is that you get back into inception. It's just kind of like a tennis match, back and forth. And so you get back to the triggers. You don't think about the deception. You think about getting back over to this side and being there, like accepting the award, having the success, having the phone calls and the conversations, all, and people having great results and them sharing it with people. And you have associates in your organization that are now hitting 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, which means you're now 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. Right? So you write these things out, you do little maps of them, you blueprint it out. If pictures help, use pictures. But you need those triggers to keep you in the inception stage, which is really over here. And as you do that, there's this miraculous thing that happens. God starts to bring into your awareness every needful thing that will enable you to get over there when you act on it. Right? Okay, so knowing those principles, and there's another principle. So this would be the principle of assumption, doing this. And you would also have to use the principle of L and R, which is the law of non-resistance. Resisting this assumption means that you're now looking at all the obstacles. You're listening to the old paradigm. You're listening to the crabs down here, and they pulled you from the top of the bucket, or they pulled you from this side of the cliff where you're happy, joyful, and experiencing that new concept of yourself. They pull you back to get back to reality, right? Because they don't understand the law of assumption and the law of non-resistance. Well, they don't understand the law of assumption, and they don't understand the new principles that you have now internalized to show you that you can reach that goal that you have for your life, that dream that you have for your life. So what you have to do is there's a companion principle that goes along with assuming. It's the principle of law of non-resistance. That's going to tell you don't listen to them. Stay in that faithful state. Believe that you already have it. And the miracles will start to show up in your life. So 2 principles right there that are going to cause you to behave differently than these crabs down here. And Isogenics has now presented principles to you of health and exercise and connecting with people and sharing information. You're going to be doing those actions as well while you're doing these actions and these principles. They all come together. And if you leave any of them out, it will be incomplete. And you'll only succeed so far through just doing the actions of the physical, talking to people and connecting. You've got to do the law of assumption. You've got to create the new concept of yourself. All right? So this is going to cause you to behave in a way that somebody down here for sure is going to think you're wacko. They're going to think you're crazy. They cannot even piece together why you would do the law of assumption. And everybody is breaking the law of non-resistance. Everybody's resisting. Those people coming down the elevator were breaking the law of non-resistance. They were talking about things they don't like. And where your energy goes, that thing grows. So they can't even conceive of not complaining because they've never even been introduced to the law of assumption. And this is what we're changing. This is the environment and the culture that Isogenics is creating for people to progress and expand and grow and get better results in their lives. When you're on the verge of crossing the threshold, okay, so behavior or concept of your, okay, let's see. When you're at the verge of crossing the threshold into level 3 and you start exhibiting some sabotaging behaviors, what we do that serves us is 3 by 5 it. The behavior or concept of yourself as a level 3 leader. So if you're a level 1 leader, You don't have to do it all on your own in a way that you have to understand every single intricate detail of being a level 3 leader. Once you start to understand some of the principles and behaviors, you can now start to write yourself in as a as a level 3 leader, right? I'm building a great team. I'm cycling 30 times a week, right? That would mean you're developing a great team, which means you're a level 3 leader. At a 3-star, 40 cycles a week. Does that make sense? So once you start to see the principles, you can start to 3x5 it, and you don't have to know exactly how you're going to get over here. You just assume it, and the right things will show up. Yeah, you get into action with the things you think you should be doing. You got to get into some kind of action, but the right actions will be revealed to you. Somebody's going to show up. Somebody's going to hand you a book. It's going to be an audio. Something's going to help you progress that forward because you're doing the law of assumption and you're not breaking the principle of law of non-resistance. So 3x5 the behavior or concept of yourself as a level 3 leader. Write it out so that it incorporates the law of assumption, the new goal as an already accomplished fact for you. This is an investment in your personality and character that returns to you a millionfold. Trust me on this. Okay? Trust me on this principle. Put it to test. Do it. Every morning, get into action with assuming with your eyes closed for 10, 15, 30 minutes. Do that every morning. Get over here in your mind. Feel what it's like to be there. Step into it. Be in the shoes, not looking at it and wondering how you're going to get there. Experience it. Do it every morning. 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. And do it with your eyes closed. This puts you at a frequency that brings to you the new ideas and a new internalization that comes as if it were from the ether. It just starts to download, you guys, seemingly out of nowhere. This is the spirit communicating to you the new truths, the new interrelationships that progress you forward by assisting you to internalize the principle in a way that it relates to you. It will make sense, and you will see in your mind's eye the proper application and all the relationships that will produce an obvious result. So something that you didn't see before, you will now see it. Okay, so as you start to do this 3x5, get into assumption, don't break the law of non-resistance. As you trust in that process, the principles will be made even clearer to you. And even if the principle isn't made even clearer to you, you're following a principle that's going to bring the right things in to your awareness to get you to your goal. I was obeying these laws before I understood them because of the way that somebody showed me how to set up a goal. Most people set the goal wrong. They look at the goal. They set a future date for the goal. No, you're that now. The law of assumption isn't that I'm going to be that. The law of assumption is that I'm already that. And I'm experiencing it. And my life is the way it is because of that. You go there in your imagination. 5 or 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes every morning. Do it every morning. What's going to happen though, remember, the paradigm and the thoughts and the self-talk of level 1 or level 2 is going to try and pull you down out of the bucket. Oh, I don't have time to do it this morning. I have way more important things to do than be sitting here in my office doing nothing, right? Well, the only reason you would allow that to pull you out and not do it is because you don't understand these principles enough. That's why I'm saying trust me, just do it, all right? And stick to it, play at 100%. And when you're there, don't fight yourself, get into the feeling, relax, and just enjoy being there. Like a child does when they're, a child and they daydream. Get back into that daydream, but make it real, feel it. And do it consistently. Again, the only reason you wouldn't is because you don't understand the principles of that. And I'm going to tell you that level 3, level 4, level 5 leaders, they do that. They may not know that they're doing that, like they're actually going in their office and they're 3x5ing it, but they are doing it in their mind all the time. They're just kind of on cruise control with doing that. So even if they've never been taught the principles in detail, which kind of is a little bit dangerous because they could fall out of doing it if something negative happens, like the economy goes down, and now they start focusing on the economy, which produces the negative chatter, like the people going down the elevator, and then they start to lose everything. They go bankrupt because they believe that that's what was supposed to happen because the economy was bad, when they could have overridden the economy by staying up here with the law of assumption and the law of non-resistance. Pay no attention to the bad economy, okay, and stay focused. And there are many people who did phenomenal through bad economies. And I would say we're one of them. In 2008, 2009, we did just fine. We continued to grow. Why? Because I didn't focus on the negative. I stayed focused on the law of assumption and the goal as an already accomplished fact. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We've heard of that, right? Job said, what I feared came upon me. Because it occupied his mind and his thoughts. Okay. Keep studying and keep assuming and act out the new concept of yourself as the ideas and opportunities afford you to do so. So you do get into the actions. You're actually climbing out of the bucket. You're doing the actions that you know to do. Don't put those off. Don't procrastinate. Don't be lazy, right? So you got to get into the actions of the things you know to do. And what happens is it just kind of starts to stair step. But it's not really a stair step. It's more of a gradient. Because if it was like this, you would totally know it. It would be much easier than it is, but it doesn't work like that. It has to be a trial of your faith. So it's more like this, okay? As you're getting into action and you're doing the law of assumption and you're climbing out of the bucket, your income-producing activities. This is the principle that Charles Hanno calls the advancing man. You're progressing, you're growing, and you're getting better and better results, which is advancing, it's progressing, and it's making a bigger and bigger impact for you and for humanity. It's line upon line and precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. If you say to yourself, well, I already know how to treat people, I'm a nice person, then you're not open to growing and essentially saying, I already know everything there is that I need to know about how to treat people. Okay, and then you close yourself off to opening yourself up to the higher levels of principles of how to treat people, how to follow up. And it's the internalization process of that too that's going on over, am I going into deception as I'm thinking about treating people a certain way to get a certain result? Do I go into deception? Well, that wouldn't be a level 3 thinking. You might know how to treat people, but you don't know how to behave in the process of treating those people inside your head. That's why these other principles are so important. That's why we got to learn, the whole pie, not just pieces or slivers of it. Then you become a very advancing person. All right. Okay, so then you're saying, I already know everything I need to know about how to treat people. Well, if you, and maybe you do treat people courteously and you treat them with love and you treat them like you would want to be treated, but there's these other principles that are missing, like the law of assumption. Like maybe in golf, you don't want to look at the lake, you want to look at the pin. Maybe as you're treating people, you're looking at the lake, but you don't even realize you're looking at the lake because you don't even know what the principle is surrounding the fact that states you're looking at the lake. It's a blind spot for you. So while you're getting into action and you are obeying the law of love and treating people with, and giving them the red carpet service, you're breaking another principle that's stifling your growth. You'll only get so far, and that would be anywhere from no cycles to 10 cycles a week. Because you're breaking some other very critical principles as you're getting into action. You're looking at the lake. And again, I'm going to reiterate, I'm going to be redundant. You don't even know you're looking at the lake because you don't know the principle that tells you you're looking at the lake while you're treating people like royalty. Okay, both of those have to be obeyed at the same time. Otherwise, you're stifled in your progress. You're not an advancing person. You'll only advance so far. But if you're, okay, so I already know everything I need to know. Well, if you have maxed out your center and you're maxing out center after center after center, then maybe you're right. You do know everything you need to know. But if your business is not thriving and expanding and increasing your cycles, you, my friend, are wrong, and your ego and your pride and your delusion is keeping you from humbling yourself, and you are unteachable. So congratulations. Right? So we don't want to be in that category. So I'm trying to draw some really stark contrast here. Being facetious, but not really facetious. I'm being truthful in a way, but not that you're being belligerent. It's just that it's through ignorance. We're not admitting certain things to ourselves. And we're, okay, so just make sure you're realizing these things and what we're doing to ourselves and what we're saying to ourselves based on the results. Are they a match? Many people enroll from level 2 and then proceed to lead from level 1. Will it lead to production? It can't. So many people enroll, okay, so they're at a level 2 in their ability to get people on the products, but when they come to leading people, they're at a level 1. And so therefore, will it lead to level 3? It can't. By law, it can't. You come in as a level 2 person in general, let's say, you're a great guy, you're a great gal, everybody loves you, they speak highly of you because you're so nice, you know how to treat people. But when it comes to leading people and inspiring them to achieve higher, you go to a level 1. Could you ever take anybody to a level 3? No way, you couldn't get into production. You would never lead people because you're leading from a level, you're a great person, everybody loves you, they love to be around you, but when it comes to leading, you're at a level 1 because you don't understand the principles of a level 3 leader. That's all. It's not a bad person. Again, all of us are at some level that needs to improve. No matter where we're at, we all can improve. Kathy Coover, you know, what have they made? We could say she's a 6-time billionaire. She still can improve. All of us, no matter where we're at, can improve. It's not about judgment and looking down at people. And definitely don't look down on yourself. Look at, I want to evolve. I don't need to change. I just need to evolve. Change like I need to change? No, I just want to evolve the concept of myself. I want better results for me and my family. I want to create better results in the world. That's a congenial, very positive outlook at moving forward rather than I need to change. I'm such a failure, you know, I'm such a loser. Totally different connotation. I want to evolve. I can. I choose to. All right, so they are operating from principle. Okay, so they, let me read this again because this is important. Many people enroll from level 2, so they get them on the products, and then they proceed to lead from a level 1. Will it lead to production? It can't. By law or by principle. It cannot. They cannot. They are operating from principles that cannot produce production, and they are ignorant to what that is like to lead from a level 3 principle perspective. They don't even know they're looking at the lake because they've never been taught or exposed to the principles that would show them, I've been looking at the lake. Jack Canfield would say, there's the gorilla. Once you learn the level 3 principles of leadership, you won't behave like a level 1 leader. You'll behave like a level 3 leader once you incorporate, internalize, and facilitate those principles in your behavior. Now you're a level 3 leader and you can bring other people to that level 3, which is production, which is a huge amount of money in isogenics. Until they have internalized and made the level 3 principles a part of their value system and their behavior, they can't lead at a level 3. Along with internalizing the principle is the new concept of yourself. And so there are things, you would be teaching people principles, like let's say you're a level, you bring people in at level 2, you lead from level 1, you might still be giving them the right tools in isogenics. You might be using the whiteboard presentation on the compensation plan. There's just going to be something missing. There's when even though you're directing them to the right principles, the way you're teaching them or the people you're attracting, whatever the case might be, there's so many dynamics that our finite minds, I couldn't even bring that out in its fullness and in its full array. But there are just so many dynamics that are still going to prevent you, even though you're doing the actions that a level 3 leader does. It's not the actions alone. It's what you're internalizing and how you're doing what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. Okay? All of that comes from an understanding of the principles on a profound level. So when you understand those principles, what you're projecting is being received. And unless you're doing that from a level 3, you could be diagramming the compensation plan, but it's not being perceived by that other person. And I don't know all of the different arrays of how the dynamics of that work, but I just know that that is part of that principle. Along with internalizing the principle is the new concept of yourself and its combination of assuming and understanding together. All right, so along with internalizing the principle is the new concept of yourself. So you internalize the principle, You get it. You have your ahas right here. And now you can start to diagram or blueprint the concept of that into yourself, which you're going to bring over here. This is where the momentum starts to pick up when you're in action physically and when you're in action mentally. And you're following the right principles that are going to have to give you the results. What I'm sharing with you right here is gold, you guys. Whether the fact that you may not understand it, again, it's just more dynamics. It's you doing some of your own homework, finding different resources, and this will all of a sudden fit with something else, and it makes the connection to where you're like, oh, I get it now. Like you really get it, right? And it becomes a part of you, and it changes your behavior. How will you know you really got it? Your cycles start going up. That's how you know you really got it. Or you may really get it, but you need another principle. But you'll still, that will move you forward. Getting it, that one principle, getting it, it will move you forward. However, you might need another principle to really move you forward to get you to where you want to go. And just hold true. Guard your focus, right? And it'll show up. It has to. So along with internalizing the principle is the new concept of yourself that you can 3 by 5. And it's a combination of assuming and understanding together. So you understand the principle, you now put it on a 3 by 5 card. You have to follow the principle of assumption, changing the concept of yourself. You can't keep the old concept of yourself and become the new concept. It's a contradiction. You'll either love the one or hate the other, right? So concept of yourself, and it's a combination of assuming and understanding together. You do have to be first. You do have to do it first on the mental level. You have you have to internalize it first. So yeah, you have to internalize it first, and the principles also help you to internalize it more effectively to where you can blueprint it more effectively. You'll start to see the interrelationships in your mind of what would cause you to be a level 3 leader with a level 3 income. And you'll start to be able to write it out. Where somebody on a level 1, they wouldn't be able to write out an effective blueprint for a level 3 leader like somebody who understands the level 3 principles would be able to write it out. And then the believing in it as you're reading it in the morning with your eyes closed and imagining you're there. A level 1 wouldn't be able to do that because they don't see the principles clearly enough to excite them to know that I got it. It's already mine. I've already taken possession of it in my mind because the principles have aided me to do that. Once you do that, that's perfect faith. Mountains will move, and every needful thing will come to you through already established channels. And so, very powerful stuff. Hope you're getting this. But you can't assume it until you're aware of what that is. So this is very important. The spirit and the body is essential to continued progress. The spirit, that is who we really are, and all the possibilities that are built within the spirit, and this physical body. Both of them coming together is so essential for our continued progress because we need to do the climbing out of the bucket, but we also need to be doing the law of assumption and dreaming, right, and progress. The number one law of the universe is progress, and this is the process. And we're able to progress further with the physical body than we were just as spirit beings before we came into this existence. Along with internalizing the principle is the new concept of yourself. Okay, we got that. The principle of the business has got to get in you. All right, so that goes back to, on a level 2, you get people enrolled, but you don't quite understand the principles of the business to get people to produce. Now, here's something that I want to share. I'm just going to jump to this now. I have a lot more to go through, but there's something that I want to go over here that relates to getting the business in you and just kind of understanding the principles and then seeing how that applies to me in the situations of life, with isogenics and everything I've experienced, that I can now 3 by 5 it very effectively with a high level of belief because I understand the principles. And then I start to assume that new concept of myself through the 3 by 5. So I want to draw this out on kind of how the different dynamics build up that belief And I just kind of went through in my mind, what were some of the things that I did where all of a sudden I was like, oh, I get it, right? So hopefully, maybe in this moment, it'll be powerful enough that you really get the law of compensation in you and the principle of the compensation plan in isogetics, so that you can 3x5 it and also speak it from that level 3, which is going to produce production. All right, so there was several things that happened. So let me just read a couple things here that lead into what I want to diagram here. With the law of, I'm just going to read, with the law of assumption, it is not that you know every detail, circumstance, person, event, or day it will be accomplished, but rather that you have the ability to come to a specific, detailed, certain conclusion by seeing the end principally based, not through error. So you can literally, like the farmer, being able to know every step is going to lead to this. He knows with absolute immutable fact it's going to be this way. So all the details will be manifested and brought about by a greater power than your conscious mind is able to comprehend. The principles teach you that. Knowing and applying the principles does not make one infallible, but they do make one consistent in behaviors and results. Harmony on the inside produces harmony on the outside. So that power within us, we can bring forth a thousand joys or 1,000 ills, right? And it's from As a Man Thinketh. What's his name? John, I want to say Allen. Can't remember the author's name right now. But he says, mind is the master mold that makes, I can't remember, I'll have to get that and maybe present it on another module. But talking about that life is like a looking glass. And we have this power within us. And mind is the master molder that makes or creates, and thinking what he will brings forth 1,000 joys or 1,000 ills. So if you would really understand that, if you understand the principles, you'd be like, yep, he's totally speaking truth. But okay, so that what I'm reading isn't what I wanted to go into. It doesn't relate. I just had an epiphany and I started writing it out here. So I'm just going to jump into it. So the principle of the compensation plan, these are some of the things that happened to me. I was introduced to Robert Kiyosaki and his books. One of those books was The Business School for People Who Love Helping People. That was one of the books I read. Another one from him was the cash flow quadrant. So in the cash flow quadrant, he uses this graph where this is an employee, this is self-employed, this is big business, and this is investment. Now, before I get into that, another thing that I got introduced to early on, which many of you have, is the penny being doubled a day. So you have 1 cent, and then 2, and then 4, and then 8, and then it's not just doubled, it's the power of 2. So it's growing by the geometric power of 2. Because doubled would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. But we're actually compounding it. So 8 turns into 16, which is 32, which is 64. Okay? So, and then it goes on out. We've all seen that. And by the end of 30 days, if you're doubling that penny every day for 30 days through this compounding effect, it's like $5 million at the end of 30 days. 31 days, and it's $10 million. So I saw that. And it made sense to me, but I didn't really comprehend the principle. I didn't understand the principle and how it related to me and my behaviors. So although I understood it, it did impact my behavior, but not on the level that it needed to impact my behavior and my being able to grasp the concept of myself as a millionaire in isogenics. It wasn't enough on its own. So as I continue to gather different information, so this had nothing to do with Robert Kiyosaki. So Robert Kiyosaki said 95% of people retire broke on this side of the quadrant. Well, in his book, he teaches the details of why that is. And it's in the explaining of the details of why an employee or somebody who's self-employed retires broke. And he goes into the details which then unfold the principle on a greater detailed level. for me to start to see the principle of the thing. And how do 5% of the population end up retiring wealthy? They can do what they want, when they want, for as long as they want, and not suffer any repercussions negatively financially. What is all of the intricacies and details that he's explaining in the book? The behaviors and drawing contrast and talking about things like leverage. And then down here, it's passive. And it would be residual. We've all heard these, but for most people, when they just hear that by itself and don't do their own work, like nobody sat down and read the book for me and I sat with my legs folded in front of them and listened to them excitedly read the book to me. I read the book myself, and I didn't read it to get through it. I read it to understand, what am I doing wrong? Where can I identify the things that I'm erroneously doing? What am I missing? And so as I read it, I didn't read through it quickly. I read through it slowly, and I took notes, and I wrote in the columns, and I underlined things, and then I would get a notebook and I would write down thoughts that were coming to me. And what happened is there were correlations between this and this. They started to reveal a principle to me in a way that I was starting to recognize my behavior and what part of my behaviors were serving me and which part of my behaviors were not serving me. In other words, which behaviors would move me towards my goals and my dreams, and which behaviors wouldn't move me closer to my goals and my dreams. And I started to realize that on this side, these people, financially speaking, and what they get to do, when they do it, how they do it, and as long as they want to do it, they're never going to realize their dreams over here. Because I started to realize they're not following the principles that would lead to the life of living your dream life. Now, is it possible for them to? Yeah, because they could start to follow the principles that these people are following on this side. Now, one of the principles was, let's take one person, and so we'll say this is a person, one person, and they work 40 hours a week. So 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? So one person, let me actually do this. 1 week, well, let's go actually. 1 day, 8 hours, and times 5 days equals 40 hours. Now, if I get paid $10 an hour, equals $400 a week. Now, I could work more than 8 hours and I can increase my income. This is what people do on the left side. They're trading time for money. So 8 hours and I'm going to get money. If I work 10 hours, I would make more money. If I work 15, 16 hours a day, I'm going to make even more money. But after that, 16, 18 hours a day, that's about all this physical body could handle. If I started doing more than that, I would probably kill myself. So that's what I got up to. It was about 16 to 18 hours a day that I was working. Okay, so that was experiential. And I had been doing that for a long time, and I couldn't even replace the broken window on my house. It stayed broken for years. All right, so that's experiential. And now when Robert Kiyosaki started teaching about the principle of leverage, and remember, I didn't hurry through the book. I was digesting and internalizing. What does John Maxwell say about our principles? Principles are something that you can internalize and they become a part of your value system. So I was internalizing the principles that were being taught here, which then became a part of my value system, which changed my behaviors. And you guys, I got from this left side to this right side in 16 months. And I had no idea how that was even going to happen. Because I used the law of assumption, it did happen. It didn't happen magically. I got into action, but I was acting on the right opportunities that opened up into my awareness. got some of the craziest things happen. People calling me being in line at the store and talking to somebody, or me doing an expo. I'm in action and I met the right person. Okay, where I had been doing actions before and those things weren't happening. Now, some people would call that luck. You work the expo long enough and you're going to have luck. No, it wasn't luck. I created intentionally, through the law of assumption, meeting that particular person. Now, I didn't know I was going to meet that particular person at that particular expo at that particular time, but that's how the law of assumption works. You have to exercise a degree of faith. So I internalized the information, which was principles in this case. Robert Kiyosaki was teaching principles, just like I'm teaching you. And I internalized the principles, and then I could relate that to my personal experience, and I can see the difference in the behaviors because of this. And then this started making more and more sense with the compensation plan and the behaviors that I was learning through the whole thing. Now, so let's take 10 people working 8 hours. That, I'm going to need my calculator, so let's see. I should have used the math and made the math easy. I thought I did. Anybody can do this, you guys. Okay, so 10 people. Let's make the math a little bit easier. Just in this particular case, we'll do this. 10 people a day are working 10 hours. So in 5 days, 10 times 50 is 500 hours. So in times 5 days equals 500 hours. Times $10 equals $5,000. At 16 to 18 hours a day, I was nowhere close to $5,000 a day. As a mechanic and delivering newspapers and fixing cars at home at night, 16 to 18 hours a day was a small, tiny fraction of $5,000 a day, right? So it's teaching me a principle right here. Now, many of you have seen this principle, but did you digest it by reading the book and really getting all of the details? Because I'm only giving you a small fraction of the details from Robert Kiyosaki's book, The Cash Flow Quadrant and the Business School for People Who Love Helping People. Another one was Don Fala's, the 45-second napkin presentation that will change your life. It's a book. I read that book as well. I was really internalizing in so many different forms and information the principle of leverage, the principle of residual income, the principle of generating wealth. And when I internalized that principle enough, it changed my behavior. And I had no more self-sabotaging behavior. And it was easier for me to print out a 3x5 of my goal and then step into that, because I saw that the principles would absolutely enable me to achieve that. It was achievable, where something before that didn't seem achievable now totally seemed totally possible. I had no qualms with whether I could do that or not, because I could see the principles clearly. And anybody can follow a principle once they know it. We all do it with gravity. Not everybody does it with health, but if they understood the principles of health enough, like many of us do, we're going to obey the principles of health at a much higher level. All right, so now let's just flip this upside down. Don Fala Robert Kiyosaki taught me the principle, and I could relate that to the Isagenix compensation plan, but Don Fala sank it in even more. What he does is he flips this, and he says, well, doesn't really flip it, but he says, let's take this and go 40 people a day, work 2 hours, which would produce, in 5 days, let's figure this out. Okay, so 40 people times 2 equals 80 times 5. That's 400. So in times 5 days equals 400. So 400 labor hours were produced with 40 people only working 2 hours a day, a little bit longer than their lunchtime, right? What would you rather do? Work 10 hours or 2 hours a day and then do what you want the rest of the 22 hours that that day has to offer? Okay, so now let's times that by 10. Whoops. So 400 times $10 an hour, that's $4,000. Pretty close to 10 people working 10 hours a day. So what I could see is if you could have more people doing much less, you could still accumulate what people working really hard and trading more of their lives and their time for this money, right? So if we just went up one more, let's go, well, let's turn it into 80. I know a lot of people who have 80 people in their organization, right? So 80 people a day work, let's say 2 hours. So we'll go 80 times 2, it's going to be 160. 80 people a day. So it's 160 times 5 days. So 160 times 5, that's 800 times 10, $10 an hour, that's $8,000 an hour, or $8,000 that they would get paid over the 5 days. So you can see the difference, right? The more people. And again, you may say, well, I already understand that principle, but you don't. Well, if you're not getting production, it's because you're not inspiring this principle to other people effectively, because you don't understand it effectively enough. Because if you did, your behavior would attract and you would be able to articulate to people well enough so that you get into production mode, which would be a level 3 leader. There will be self-sabotaging behavior if you don't understand the principles enough. One day you'll work it hard because you kind of understand the principles. You don't kind of obey the law of gravity, do you? You obey the law of gravity perfectly because you understand very well the principles. And so it absolutely dictates to you your behavior. I'm telling you, until you understand the principles of leverage, passive, residual, how it has to work with the isogenics comp plan. Look, another thing that was a big part of this was Jimmy Smith teaching the power of 2. George Ruiz talking about consultant machine, understanding the 300 and 600 and diagramming all of that out, really understanding the intricacies of the compensation plan, how it pays on all the dynamics of the compensation plan. It pays on unlimited depth. You only need 100 BV. Jimmy Smith saying our best product is 100 BV. Well, that's not a product, Jimmy. That's the business volume. You have to buy a product to get 100 BV. Because I understand what Jimmy means by that, our best product is 100 BV. And all of these other dynamics that I internalized changed my behavior, and I no longer had the thoughts of a level 2 leader, and I no longer had the behaviors of a level 2 leader. I brought the best of a level 2 leader and a level 1 leader along with me, but I incorporated those into the level 3 behavior and understanding. They didn't contradict, they supported what I was growing into. And so they came along with the best of those level 1 and 2. You guys, you get that? So it's just a matter of you putting in the time and the effort to study and find that principle. This is what Will Smith's grandmother meant when she said, Will, any challenge that you have, you keep self-sabotaging. You're not getting, all of these people, you're finding the wrong people to get you to 2-star and 3-star and 4-star, right? That's a challenge, that's a problem. There's somebody who's figured out a way to overcome that challenge and they've written it down. Now, they didn't write it in one book for you to read the one book in one paragraph and ta-da, you got it and now you've changed. It's gonna be a culmination of searching, finding those truths. And as you build line upon line, precept upon precept, all of a sudden you get the bigger picture. You've internalized all those concepts, all those precepts, and you now have internalized that. It's a part of your value system. Your value system dictates to you the behaviors. How you're going to behave, why you're going to behave that way, what you're going to do when you're behaving, all of it, you guys. So again, you may say, well, I understand those principles, but you're not moving forward into production. Then if you truly do understand all of these, then there might be a principle you're missing when it comes to serving people and getting people to do things. With the products, or it might be something else. It might be the principle of all distractions are equal, right? The principle of focus. That's not a principle, all distractions are equal. The principle is the law of focus, right? It might be with the law of focus. Maybe you're trying to do 3 different things at the same time. The principle of focus would tell you you can't do that. You could do it, but you're only going to get so far when you do it. You've got to have extreme focus. What is the principle of focus, right? So if you've got a job, you got to do that job because it's paying the bills, or maybe you don't have to do that job. I don't know. But you're hanging on to that job because you don't quite have the new concept of yourself on a level that you believe it's going to happen, so you hang on to the old job even though you could jump into isogenics full time. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's everybody's case. I'm just saying anything's possible. Well, maybe you have your job and you need that job to pay the bills so that you can keep putting food on the table and have your home, don't get kicked out, pay the mortgage. But now your hobbies and other distractions, going to the movies, hanging out with your friends, what else? Doing the laundry and making sure the laundry's always done and there isn't any piles of laundry that are ever building up. Maybe it's constantly cleaning the house, cleaning the dishes, whatever the case might be. Add all of those distractions up and you're breaking the law of focus because you're putting time and energy into so many different things, you can't create the momentum, the law of momentum, the law of synergy, right? So you might understand this, but you don't understand these other laws. I was exposed to where I can internalize the law of focus. I didn't bring that with me. It was something that I learned, internalized, and made it a part of my value system. Where your focus goes, that thing grows. Where your energy goes, that thing grows. Right? All of these different things. All distractions are equal, whether it's watching TV, doing the laundry. That's not building passive residual leverage for me. Do those things need to be done? Yes, but at what level and how am I doing them? A level 1 person and a level 2 leader is going to be doing those things differently than a level 3 leader. The level 3 leader will need to do some of those things, but a level 3 leader will literally get rid of some things. Some of those distractions, bye-bye. The cable TV, I'm canceling the subscription. I'm taking the TV down off the wall and it's staying unplugged. A level 3 leader, if that's what they need to do, then they're going to do that. Where a level 2 would be like, are you crazy? I enjoy watching TV at night. It's my release. It's how I stay balanced in life. It's why I work hard, I play hard. Okay, well, how's that serving you? You don't totally understand the law of focus. Okay, there's no BV in TV. So again, understanding all of these different principles. So those books I would recommend, watching the compensation plan over and over, and going along with the other principles that we've learned. Now you can start to 3x5 because you understand these principles. So we're always 3x5ing. We're creating and evolving the new concept of ourselves. And we're writing it down, and with the law of assumption, I'm getting over to this side more effectively now, and I'm winning, right? Yay, I'm winning because I'm literally attracting to me, right? God brings it into you through the modus operandi, but you're doing your part over here, right? You're doing your part. And so you're attracting to you within your awareness all the right things instead of all the wrong things. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop there. A lot to chew on. There's more that I want to go over, but that's just going to continue to grow. We'll keep doing the modules and getting more of these principles out so that you have more to choose from, more directions to go to where you'll discover, like Will Smith's grandmother said, you're going to find it. You just keep looking. Somebody's got it somewhere. So with that, thanks you guys. We'll see you on the next module.